Good afternoon, all from London. Greetings to you all across the globe. I hope you're all well and staying safe in these difficult times. My name is Uday Nagaraju. I am co founder and executive president of Global Policy Insights and the project director of the Commonwealth project. It's a great pleasure to welcome you all to the event Vanguards in the 21st Century Optimizing Commonwealth Networks. Firstly, at GPI, we keep diversity, inclusion, and respect of equalities at the forefront of our mission. And in keeping in with these, we would like to take this opportunity to condemn the brutal killing of George Floyd and hope to never see an incident like that happen again. We hope that we can aspire to build inclusive institutions for all across the globe. So let's begin the event now. Without further ado, I call upon David Gomez to speak on behalf of the Ramphel Institute. David is director of Ramphel Institute, has 20 years of experience leading and delivering development initiatives in the Caribbean, Africa, the Pacific, and Latin America, including in international trade and private sector development. David.
Uday, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I am David Gomez coming to you live from London. This is the Ramphel Institute along with Global Policy Insights and the second e-symposium on optimizing Commonwealth networks for the 21st century. Welcome to all of you in the Commonwealth and around the world, and a special welcome to my colleagues Uday and Neha from GPI, as well as to our panelists joining us to discuss how their leadership and their organizations can be collectively and separately harnessed to better optimize Commonwealth networks to take on the challenges of the 21st century. So Mr. Jarvis Mattia from the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association will be our keynote, and Uday will do formal introductions for him. Dr. Anne Gallagher, the Director General of the Commonwealth Foundation, Dr. Greg Monroe, Secretary General of the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, and Dr. Nicholas Watts, who is the Chair of the Independent Forum of Commonwealth Organizations. But first, here's my brief take. Like most of you, I am still trying to come to terms with the seismic social and political shifts taking place around the world. The issues of racial discrimination and other systemic inequalities that seemingly persist in too many countries, alongside the growing threats posed by climate change, modern-day slavery, and the struggles of Commonwealth countries at generating sustainable economic growth, raises important questions, I think, about whether these are issues unique to the Commonwealth. They also question the nature and effectiveness of the responses to overcoming them. These are important considerations, yet the work of the innumerable parts of the Commonwealth all too often comes across as disjointed, or at the very best as too compartmentalized. How can we change this? How can the latent and kinetic capacities of Commonwealth organizations be leveraged to overcome the challenges of collaborating? And what value propositions are Commonwealth organizations offering for overcoming the inadequate responses to grassroots needs and for giving marginalized groups and people a voice and a platform for that voice to be heard? The Ramphel Institute, like other vanguards of the Commonwealth participating in the panel here today, is doing its own small part, often working collaboratively with others, such as we're doing with GPI, to effect changes. The revisioned Ramphel Institute has retained its founding DNA, but has refreshed its approach to engendering discourse and interchange around current and emerging challenges to the Commonwealth, while retaining its focus on the areas of social and economic policy, governance, and the environment. The Ramphel Institute will be launching a number of other innovative initiatives in the immediate future, including one that examines the contributions of different Commonwealth leaders to the organization's evolution, and another that explores how inequality is handled in all corners of the Commonwealth. But let me end by announcing the launch of our webinar series on air pollution, being held in collaboration with partners from Delhi, as well as other corners of the Commonwealth. This will take place on Friday the 19th June at 2 p.m. And I invite you to join us for that event. You can check for the details on the Ramphel Institute's website. But I think before closing, what I want to do is turn it back over to Uday so he can give us a bit more about GPI's very, very innovative Vanguard and Commonwealth Vanguard project. And I think he will tell us a bit more about that. Uday.
Thank you, David, for giving us more insight into Ramphel Institute's work, and we'll definitely attend your next event. Um, my topic is GPI's Commonwealth Project and Vanguards of the Commonwealth. Well, what is GPI? Global Policy Insights, or GPI, is an international public policy think tank operating out of London, Washington, DC, and New Delhi. We research on models of governance, political economy, and policies aimed at accelerating socio-economic growth at the local, national, and international levels. We do that by building a strong engagement between governments, corporates, academic, and professional communities. Our focus areas are international trade and economics, governance and policy, international strategic studies, artificial intelligence and technology, and sustainable development. The Commonwealth project is our key project, which covers aspects of all the focus areas that I've mentioned. The project brings into discussion the revised and reinvigorated role of the Commonwealth and also makes efforts to strengthen these networks. Sorry, I think Jarvis is just trying to connect. Um, so, So we've conducted events, podcasts, interviews, and published articles from a range of actors, from parliamentarians in various Commonwealth countries, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the CPA Small Branches Secretary General, parliamentary speakers, high commissioners, academia, international leaders on the reinvigorated role of Commonwealth. One event that we conducted in December 2018, a seminar on Brexit, UK, and Commonwealth, triggered a discussion in the UK Parliamentary Questionnaire, or a questionnaire on international trade, where a Brexit Select Committee member, Seema Malhotra MP, brought the takeaways from our event and to the questionnaire and discussed it with the International Trade Secretary of State for the policy towards Commonwealth countries. We will be producing some formal reports in the near future, which have been delayed due to COVID-19. But two things have emerged from our conversations and research. One is the pivotal role of the Commonwealth networks in strengthening democracy, promoting good governance, and sustainable development. Two, potential of utilizing emerging technologies and innovation to address these current challenges. It is in this context that we connected with key Commonwealth networks, the Vanguards of Commonwealth. We have four today in a panel and another Vanguard as a partner in the event, which are the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the Commonwealth Foundation, the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, the Independent Forum of Commonwealth Organizations. The Commonwealth Parliamentary Association has been particularly supportive in our initiatives, and they have helped us in building the platform in the connectivity with, say, Cook Island Speaker or the Malta Speaker and few other parliamentary structures. However, we look to work with all the vanguards in this exercise, in this project, to strengthen the work of the vanguards and take it forward. As an organization committed to Commonwealth, we are keen to strengthen the work of vanguards by strengthening the networks through these debates, research, and discussions. Today's event is the second event in the joint e-series by Global Policy Insights and the Ramphel Institute. The title of the e-series is Commonwealth: Optimizing Networks and Opportunities for the 21st Century. The inaugural featured the keynote address by Baroness Patricia Scotland, as you all know. The e-series looks at the context of broader 21st century challenges, and COVID being the current one, and examines some key questions. How has the pandemic affected Commonwealth nations, particularly small states, island nations, and sorry, I'll have to admit Jarvis. I think I see two or three there. So, yes, coming back to the topic. So, how has the pandemic affected Commonwealth nations, particularly small states, island nations, and developing economies? How can this world body channel the youth, technology, entrepreneurship, education, peace and diplomacy, good governance, and human rights among a plethora of areas of expertise? Is there an exceptionalism to the experience of Commonwealth as compared with the nations outside of it? Most importantly, what is the role of Commonwealth in the 21st century given the COVID-19 crisis? What can Commonwealth do given its present mandate and influence? So we aim to bring together global decision makers, political and social leaders, scholars and experts across a range of fields, including medicine, technology, artificial intelligence, and social sciences, among others, to bring a novel conversation on the Commonwealth, optimizing networks and opportunities for the 21st century. One aspect which is quite interesting is some members of the Commonwealth are leaders in aspects of technology, AI, and other areas. Like, for instance, digital learning has picked up, particularly post COVID-19, and members of Commonwealth are leaders in these areas. So, how can Commonwealth leverage on those members and take those opportunities? And some organizations, some corporations, also global leaders, organizations within Commonwealth countries are global leaders in these areas. So how can Commonwealth leverage on these strengths and utilize it to address the challenges of the 21st century is also would also be looked at in our series. So now, so that is pretty much about our project and how it is about how it links with the vanguards of the 21st century, and we look forward to working with the vanguards in strengthening the activities of the vanguards and the entire Commonwealth system. Um, I would now like to take this. Is uh, is Jarvis back on back? Can I?
Yes, I think I'm back. Can you see me?
Mr. Mati. Oh yeah, I can hear you. Yes.
Can you see me?
We cannot see you. We can hear you. I think you might need to switch. We can see you now. That's great. That's great. I think I could see a few I could see a few windows on your name, so I wasn't too sure. Okay, so I would now like to introduce and invite our keynote speaker, Jarvis Mataya, Acting Secretary General of Commonwealth Parliamentary Association and the Director of Programs. SG Mataya is also Special Advisor in UN Women. Prior to this, he has served as the Legal Advisor and Head of Justice, Human Rights Unit at the Commonwealth Secretariat. He's a he's a postgraduate in international human law from Birkbeck University of London. So, ladies and gentlemen, Acting Secretary General of Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, SG Mathia.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to everybody. First of all, allow me to thank the Global Policy Insights and the RAM4 Institute for inviting me and the CPA to participate in these discussions. We are very delighted that we are part of this conversation, and it was a pleasure to follow last week's keynote, which was delivered by the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat. So I look forward to interacting this afternoon and share.
SG, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. I think there is I can hear echo of your voice. Maybe you have two phones or two machines open. I can see one of them is mute. The one I can see a video on.
Okay. Can you see me on that one?
I can see you, but the one I can see you on, you're on mute on that one, and your voice is echoing. I can hear your voice twice.
One. Okay. Sorry about that.
That's fine.
Okay, so just 1 second.
Sure.
Okay. Is that better now?
It's perfect now.
Okay. All right. Apologies for that. I was having problems with my laptop, so I had to switch on to my computer, to my phone. But
no
nevertheless, I'll go ahead. First of all, it's also good to see amongst us some friends, some colleagues, and partners who we work with on a day-to-day basis. We are all united in the common good of our Commonwealth. This afternoon, I'd like to begin by painting a picture of our 21st century Commonwealth. For those who may be less familiar with it, I'm sure that most of us are pretty much familiar of where we're coming from. As an organization which comprises 54 diverse states, developed and developing islands and landlocked, big and small, all united by the same shared political values, history and language, and also institutions, and representing a big population of over 2.3 billion people, almost a third of the world's population. The Commonwealth has very, very significant role to play. Historically, it has played great role in terms of fighting racism and apartheid in South Africa. And perhaps let me pause here to say that the recent developments that were sparked by what happened in the US brings to the fore and reminds us all of the work of the Commonwealth in fighting apartheid. You know that in 1986, when Sir Ramphal was the Secretary General of the Commonwealth imposed sanctions, economic sanctions on South Africa in order to push for equality. Whether one of the largest or one of the smallest in our Commonwealth family, the principle of equality of states applies and is reinforced by operating procedures which place a consensus-based approach at the heart of the decision making. So whether you are a small state, whether you are a developed country, you sit at the table as equals. And that's the uniqueness of the Commonwealth in the sense that smaller voices of smaller states are listened to at the table. Some of our countries, of course, are fastest growing economies in the world, while others, some of the smallest and most vulnerable, marginalized, and also facing threat from forces such as climate change and natural disasters. The membership of the Commonwealth, unlike regional economic blocs and other political associations, transcends the perceived North versus dichotomy. So it encompasses a wide geographical space. The Commonwealth is far from an irrelevant historical relic that some critics portray is. Our shared history and inherent flexibility allows the Commonwealth to remain enduring and agile in responding to changing global circumstances, a strength which is particularly important in the time in which we are currently living. The Commonwealth citizens reap benefits that come from positive dialogue and engagement on issues of democracy, good governance, human rights, and development. This forum for effective dialogue and shared mutual benefits has been made all the more important by the increasing focus of the international community on the development agenda. First, with the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, as it used to be popularly known, and now with the Sustainable Development Goals, which were spoken about at length by the heads of government at their meeting in London in 2018, and subsequently formed a large part of the commitments that followed in the communique. We very much value the continued work undertaken by the Commonwealth Secretariat and state level actors, but it is important to stress that the strength of the Commonwealth lies not only in the membership of governments, but significantly in its Commonwealth grouping of peoples, businesses, and civil society networks, which together constitute the Commonwealth as a distinct international family and a uniquely positioned global actor. These Commonwealth and non-governmental organizations and structures are arguably even more important during the current situation that we're facing, the coronavirus pandemic. Unfortunately, heads of government cannot meet face to face as they would have done in Rwanda this month. International travel is significantly reduced. We are having to rethink on how we deliver support and services via virtual and remote methods rather than being on the ground. And citizens of the Commonwealth are having to rely on networks easily accessible and local to them. Many third sector and membership-based organizations are working tirelessly and collaborating with governments to ensure that the delivery of critical services and the upkeep of vital infrastructures does not significantly affected by what's going on today. One of those key networks is the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, where I'm coming from, or the Parliamentary Network of the Commonwealth. As you know, the CPA was founded in 1911 and comprises some 180 national and sub-national branches or parliaments, and seek to promote the advancement of parliamentary democracy by enhancing knowledge and understanding of democratic governance. This is very much in line with the Commonwealth principles and values as contained in the Harare Declaration and other declarations of Commonwealth. This network of the CPA connects, develops, promotes, and supports parliamentarians and their staff to identify good benchmarks on governance and the implementation of the enduring values of the Commonwealth, which I have just referred to. Our activities in the CPA focus on Commonwealth's commitment to fundamental political values, including just and honest government, the alleviation of poverty, fundamental human rights, international peace and order, global economic development, the rule of law, equal rights and representation of all citizens of all genders, the separation of powers among the three branches of the government, and the right to participate in free and democratic political processes. You will know that the CPA was one of the organizations that was involved in the establishment of the Commonwealth Latimer House principles on the separation of powers. The CPA is the only global parliamentary strengthening body which includes devolved territorial, state, and provincial parliaments and legislatures. And we are therefore uniquely placed in our sharing of knowledge and best practices throughout our Commonwealth network. All other international parliamentary organizations do not have this feature. The vast membership of parliamentarians within the CPA provides a prime resource and opportunity to engage in two-way dialogue undertaken in the spirit of cooperation, promotion of shared values, and tackling common challenges and others. And no other time has this been more important, arguably, than now, when all global citizens are faced with the threat of a pandemic and its consequences, the disruption of plans and services that we offer to our members. With the aim of supporting our members and others outside the CPA network during this time, we recently produced a CPA toolkit for Commonwealth parliaments and legislatures on the COVID pandemic. This toolkit is important because it looks at how our members can ensure that business continuity is at the center of their work and how they can be able to manage the crisis. It details measures actioned by various Commonwealth parliaments and provides recommendations that can be adopted by parliaments and parliamentarians to continue to uphold their democratic responsibilities in the delivery of the legislature's role of scrutiny and lawmaking. This is a prime example of how we can utilize our Commonwealth networks effectively and share international and national best practice to tackle common challenges and enact a positive change. We learn from each other. The beauty of the diversity in the Commonwealth is that we look at each other and share these practices. While the CPA provides a large international platform for peer-to-peer learning for all its membership, we also have 9 regional networks within our organization, which reflect their geographical grouping on our board of trustees. These networks act at arm's length from our London headquarters, and some regional branches have their own dedicated secretariats. They all hold annual regional conferences, which provide an opportunity for further outreach and embedding of the values of the Commonwealth within and across regions, and with members and organizations who may not have been actively involved or aware previously. As well as the regional groupings that I have just alluded to, we also have 3 thematic networks within the CPA. There is the Small Branches Network, there is the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians Network, and more recently, we have the Commonwealth Network of Persons with Disabilities. I will describe a little bit of those networks in turn. Since 1981, we have held annual small branches conferences for members from more than 30 jurisdictions with populations of 500,000 or less. This small branches network provides an invaluable forum for members to discuss contemporary political issues and operation of democratic systems in some of the world's smallest jurisdictions. Given it is the Commonwealth's smaller states that are the most vulnerable and susceptible to factors such as economic instability, climate change, and natural disaster, and also given the focus and attention that our Commonwealth heads of government have placed on the needs of small states, it is key that we have an active network that allows for open and constructive discussions on the specific challenges these countries and legislatures face and how they can be approached. Our most recent Small Branches event enables us to partner with the Commonwealth Small States Center of Excellence and the Parliament of Malta early this year to organize a workshop on sustainable economic development, a prime example of like-minded bodies coming together in order to collect knowledge and explore best practices in a particular area. The workshop focused on the role of parliamentarians in terms of advocating for legislation that takes into account the unique difficulties that small states face on climate change and other issues, such as negotiations at WTO, for example, where small states do not have the capacity or expertise to negotiate policies that serve the interests of those small states. The network is also the vehicle for the majority of the CPA's work on climate change, the impacts of which are a danger to those in and outside the Commonwealth, and even in the wake of the COVID pandemic, are arguably the greatest threat to global health in the 21st century, as the World Health Organization asserted in recent years. In 2017, the CPA and the United Nations Environmental Programme, UNEP, signed a memorandum of understanding to provide training and cooperation and develop programs for parliamentarians on climate change with leading global experts. The MOU has helped us to engage with legislators to strengthen national legislation, deepen public debate, enhance accountability in the management of natural resources. This work has furthered both organizations' key objectives in relation to the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda and its component, especially on climate change, as well as the Paris Agreement. Again, a good example of what a committed partnership can achieve using networks and relationships which aim to promote fundamental values. As we celebrated World Ocean Day on Monday this week, we also remind ourselves of our commitment to the Blue Charter, the action plan on protecting the ocean from the effects of climate change, pollution, and overfishing. Commonwealth countries are responsible for more than a third of the world's coastal ocean and almost half of its coral reefs. And so we all in our community have a sense of duty to preserve and protect this for the future generation. And it is right that the Commonwealth places emphasis on the Blue Charter. I now move on to the second network, which is the Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians. This is a network that was founded in 1989 to increase the number of female elected representatives in parliaments and legislatures across the Commonwealth. and to ensure that women issues are brought to the fore in parliamentary debate and legislation. The CWP network provides a means of building the capacity of women elected to parliament to be more effective in their roles, improving the awareness and ability of all parliamentarians, male and female, encouraging them to include a gender perspective in all aspects of their role, legislation, oversight, and representation, and helping parliaments to become gender-sensitive institutions, and also to integrate a human rights approach to everything that they do. Through the leadership of our current CWP chairperson, Honorable Shandana Gulzar Khan, MP from Pakistan, the network has been particularly active over the last 6 months, engaging with actors such as UN Women, the Global Forum for Women Leaders, and the IPU on critical issues like the elimination of violence against women, women economic power, women economic empowerment, and the gender sensitization of our legislatures. The CWP network is also reinforcing regional strengthening actor through strengthening and supporting funds that we provide to members and branches across our geographies. And it is also a key inroad of our members into forums such as the UN Commission on Status of Women, which is an important UN body looking at progress achieved in promoting the rights of women and gender equality, the Commonwealth Women Affairs Ministers meeting, as well as the CHOGM. It is further evidence of the collaborative nature of the Commonwealth that the CPA and the Commonwealth Local Government Forum worked successfully together at the Commonwealth Women's Forum at CHOGM in London in 2018 to deliver a session highlighting the importance of women's representation at all levels of political life. And we very much look forward to collaborating again with CLGF and others in developing follow-up activities, including workshops for the CHOGM Women's Forum once it is rescheduled. With gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls at the center of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, networks such as CWP are key in building sustainable, equitable, and peaceful societies. I now move to the last network within the CPA, which is the Commonwealth Parliamentarians with Disabilities Network. As I said earlier, this was recently established to ensure that there is a disability perspective in all aspects of policy and legislation, effective implementation and enforcement of existing disability laws and policies, and provisions for equal employment opportunities and training. We believe that parliamentarians have a great role to play, not only within their sphere, but also in pushing for national agendas to promote rights of disabilities. We are currently working to reform this space and offering so that it is the most responsive it can be to our members and their evolving needs. In order for a network to continue to be of use and variable in an increasingly crowded sphere, there needs to be constant review of its efficacy and innovation. I think the word innovation is very critical at this stage, where we're trying to innovate the way of working, changing because of the coronavirus, which has disrupted the norm. Outside our internal structures and within the Commonwealth family as a whole, as mentioned, the CPA is but one of around 80 or more people-centered organizations, some of whom are represented in this discussion today, many of which I've already touched upon. These entities often exist quietly, below the radar of wider public consciousness. But these societies, institutions, professional associations, membership organizations, and charities are all working towards the improvement of people's lives within our Commonwealth. This network of Commonwealth organization is a repository of institutional memory and knowledge, they can help to maintain relations within civil society when a country leaves or is suspended from the Commonwealth, and their activities bridge the gap between the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Commonwealth Foundation, the latter of which I believe we'll hear more about from Anne Gallagher, who is with us today. Without these non-state actors, progress in achieving a prosperous and harmonious Commonwealth would be much harder to achieve. The network of the People's Commonwealth is greatly significant and integral to invoking positive change in the 21st century. The breadth of perspectives our Commonwealth family brings allows for new and necessary conversations to take place around issues such as global inequality, social and economic rights, the importance of peace building, and many more. This expansive multilateral network of peoples, civil society, and governments has allowed the Commonwealth to harness and project considerable amount of soft power capital, which is essential. Often, this reliance on soft power has been used to criticize the Commonwealth as benign and toothless, with no power of sanction and lacking in hard power. However, I would argue that this is precisely the strength of the Commonwealth, as for all its perceived lack of authority, it can offer members the benefit that come from positive dialogue and engagement on issues of democracy, good governance, human rights, gender equality, and socioeconomic development, just to mention a few. The CPA greatly benefits from its place within these conversations and wider networks, a key one being that of the associated Commonwealth organizations, a small grouping of accredited organizations who have a closer affinity to the mission of a secretariat through our governmental or political membership and its structures. As trusted partners of governments and other key stakeholders across member states, we can provide an invaluable resource and have the capacity and positioning to innovate, develop, deliver policy and programs support in pursuit of Commonwealth goals and priorities. Another vital yet smaller in size network that we are fortunate to be part of is the Commonwealth Latimer House Working Group. I referred earlier on to the Commonwealth principles, Commonwealth Latimer principles. Alongside the Commonwealth Lawyers Association, Commonwealth Legal Education Association, and Commonwealth Magistrate and Judges Association, we were tasked by the Commonwealth Secretariat in 2012 to develop a unique tool of training modules on the Latimer House principles. The training is still ongoing, and it is excellent to play a role in promoting awareness and dialogue among stakeholders within member countries on political and governance issues relating to accountability, transparency, and the separation of powers between the three branches of government. Working together in this way with other organizations provide an invaluable opportunity to create strong relationships for ongoing mutual development and discourse, benefiting our Commonwealth members for years to come. Going forward, while this pandemic introduces new challenges and obstacles and disrupts the norm in how we operate and the methods which we are able to engage with each other, the new normal also provide opportunities. Whilst we may not be able to engage in person during these unprecedented times, opportunities that take advantage of modern technologies allow us to continue to operate within our networks and support our memberships. Additionally, collaborating with other organizations who we may not have had the opportunity to partner with previously due to geography and other constraining factors enables the reaffirmation of cooperative approaches across the Commonwealth and beyond to facilitate rich knowledge sharing, capacity building during this pandemic and in the future. We look forward to continuing collaboration with all partner organizations as well as other stakeholders, both within the Commonwealth and outside the Commonwealth, in looking at ways we can continue to innovate and to improve on what we do with the disruption that we've had because of the coronavirus pandemic. In closing, I very much look forward to hear from others and also to hear from my fellow panelists' contributions, and I welcome an opportunity to respond to any questions that you may have for me or the CPA. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, SG Mathia, for your wonderful message. I'm sure the CPA's working, the internal groups and the networks is very much clear to our audience who are across, who have logged in from across the Commonwealth, who don't know the depth of the workings of CPA. I particularly like two aspects within your message. One is the CPA's new toolkit for parliaments for business continuity. That is the need of the hour at this point of time, and I'm sure parliaments will utilize the toolkit. And also your affirmation on partnerships and collaborations with the wider Commonwealth networks and other organizations, which can strengthen the works of Vanguards. So thank you very much once again, SG Mathia. We have a couple of questions for you, SG, and I would now like to bring in Neha Diwan for the questions and also to commence the panel discussion post the questions. Neha is a non-resident fellow and a political affairs officer at Global Policy Insights. She's also the project lead for Commonwealth project and works very closely with me on the Commonwealth project and other areas. Neha. You're on mute, Neha.
I think there we go. Yeah, thank you, Uday, and thank you very much, Secretary General Mathia, for that much anticipated address and on a very timely discussion for the Commonwealth. Your speech, I think, brings up two very compelling discussion areas. And the first one pertains to something that you mentioned as well, the small island nations and small states, which do make up a large chunk of the Commonwealth's membership. Now, we already are feeling the long-term impacts economically, socially and politically of COVID-19 on developing and even developed states. So naturally, one wonders what will happen of smaller states, of island nations, of vulnerable economies or low-income economies, which are at the same time being affected at a disproportionately large scale. So where do you think how do you think these economies will emerge in a post-COVID order? And will these be left behind? Will the Commonwealth offer reinforcement structures in helping them not only tackle the COVID-19 crisis at present, but also emerge out of it, competing as viable economies with the global markets and systems? Please, Secretary General.
Thank you for that question, but also for your kind compliments at the beginning. Yes, I think the pandemic has affected everybody. And given the uniqueness of small states, there are about 36 small states in the Commonwealth, the impact on them is massive. Some of those small island states already are affected annually by change in weather, the cyclones. The economies are fragile, and I'm sure that you agree with me that it is important to place an emphasis on the recovery and support to ensure that the economies are supported. We see the World Bank and the IMF already putting in place measures to support small states as well as developing states. But I think coming closer home within the Commonwealth family, within our respective mandates and within our limitations, I think we need to find ways in which we can support our members within the Commonwealth, those members who are affected drastically by the pandemic. One of the ways I'm sure is to sort of share some of the experiences and best practices in responding to the impact of the coronavirus, innovating ways of ensuring that business continues as usual. But also, I'm sure that the Commonwealth Secretariat, and when the heads of government meet, they will look at this issue and see what sort of support could be, provided to the small states, but also what sort of voice will the Commonwealth, speak at the international fora in order to advocate for attention and continued attention to these small states. Within the CPA, as I have explained earlier, we reached out as soon as the pandemic was very clear. We reached out to all our branches and offered support and solidarity, and also went on to sort of looking at ways and means of ensuring that we support parliaments to continue to discharge their democratic responsibilities, which they discharge based on the constitutional mandate that they do have.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Secretary General. And I think another important thing that deserves to be mentioned here is the CHOGM, or the Heads of Government meeting, which would have been held in Rwanda in 2020, in this month, in fact, as you also mentioned. And interestingly, Rwanda, also like Mozambique, represents a member country which does not have a direct history or relation with the former British Empire. And one is compelled to ask whether the choice of Rwanda for the setting of this important summit of the Commonwealth is almost symbolism for an expansive idea or a more universal idea of the Commonwealth and its membership going forwards. And secondly, whether this is also symbolism of transformation for democracies, particularly given Rwanda's political history. So if I could have a comment from you on that as well, please.
Well, I'm not sure whether that question should have come to me or to the Commonwealth SG, but I think it's a good question. And what I can say is that the Rwanda being one of the, I think it's actually the latest member to join the Commonwealth, and it comes with no historical connection to the Commonwealth. And that's a good thing, because it shows that even countries who do not have any historical connection with the Commonwealth, they see value in belonging to the Commonwealth. By looking at the fundamental principles and values of the Commonwealth, they subscribe to those and seeing those as values that will help them in their national development agendas, and also the right to associate at the regional level, but also at the Commonwealth level. So I think it's good, and it's also good that Rwanda came forward to offer to host the CHOGM meeting. I think that can only be a positive development, and one hopes that that provides an opportunity to strengthen the Commonwealth values and principles, and to recommit to those values going forward.
Thank you very much, again, Secretary General, for sharing that actionable insight and for really setting the flow for a debate that reinforces the position of the Commonwealth networks as vanguards for the 21st century vision of the Commonwealth. And on that note, let me bring in our other honored guests for the day and our very patient panelists. We are immensely proud to be hosting the leadership of 4 very prominent Commonwealth networks, those who, along with other affiliate members and networks of the Commonwealth, make for a fulcrum of the main stage of the Commonwealth that voices over 2.4 billion individuals' concerns and issues. So to discuss this further, we have with us Dr. Anne Gallagher, the Director General of the Commonwealth Foundation. Dr. Gallagher is also the President of the International Catholic Migration Commission, co-chair of the International Bar Association's Presidential Task Force on Human Trafficking, and a member of the Asia Dialogue on Forced Migration. She is an international lawyer, practitioner, scholar, and teacher who has also served in the United Nations for 12 years and worked with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations on human rights, justice, equality, and the prevention of exploitation, among other areas. In due recognition of her work, she was appointed Officer of the Order of Australia and named a 2012 hero by the then United States Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Welcome, Dr. Gallagher. Joining her in conversation We also have Dr. Greg Monroe, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth Local Governments Forum, CLGF. Dr. Monroe is widely recognized for his expertise in working with governments at both the international and local level. He has been the Associate Director at the International HIV/AIDS Alliance and has worked with UNAIDS, the World Bank, and as a local government official at an executive level in Cape Town and Durban, South Africa. His remarkable insight and expertise with local governance has also informed his leadership vision as the head of the CLGF, where they work constantly to localize the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. In his leadership, he also supports the forum's members in promoting local democracy and decentralization while tackling key issues on behalf of local governments internationally. We also have with us Dr. Nicholas Watts, Chair of the Independent Forum of Commonwealth Organizations, IFCO. Dr. Watts is a Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Commonwealth Studies and a Special Projects Advisor to the Commonwealth Association of Museums. He also convenes the Environment and Sustainability Working Group of the Caribbean Studies Association and is the Senior Research Associate of the Environmental Policy Research Center at the Free University of Berlin. He also holds the chair for a Sharp-End project on the UN Small Island Developing States and was also the principal investigator of the Fisherfolk Livelihoods Project of the Commonwealth Fisheries Program. And finally, joining us on this excellent panel, we also have our brilliant keynote speaker, Mr. Jarvis Mathia, who is the Acting Secretary General and the Director of Operations for the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association, the CPA. I am very honored to be moderating this panel discussion today. And as for the format of this panel discussion, I will be posing an opening question each to our four panelists to deliver their opening statements, which will be followed by subsequent questions in an open house discussion format. We will be taking audience questions via the Zoom chat box, but we request our members of the audience to kindly send in concise questions and if possible, also direct them to a particular panelist, if that's the case. So let's begin this discussion on the vanguards of the 21st century, the Commonwealth networks. Now, the Commonwealth is one of the oldest political associations in the world, and it is distinguished by two key factors. The first is the ability of this institution to adapt, transform, and deliver. And secondly is the unique key and instrumental feature at the helm of the modern Commonwealth, which are the Commonwealth networks. And these networks of the Commonwealth in turn represent a complex and interlinked and intricate system which brings together a vast number of associations working with local actors, international players, and even individual agents to deliver upon a number of plethora of the Commonwealth's shared priorities, true to two ideals. First, the commonality, and secondly, the wealth of the Commonwealth institution. So finally, to discuss the challenges, strategic issues, the working of these networks and how we look at them in the 21st century, especially now with the COVID-19 pandemic, let me bring in first Dr. Anne Gallagher to deliver us with the insight from the Commonwealth Foundation on the question that what are the fundamental challenges faced by the Commonwealth today and how can the Commonwealth networks work to overcome these? Dr. Gallagher, may I please begin the panel discussion with you?
Thank you very much, Neha, and also to Jarvis for that really inspiring opening address that I hope I can really do justice to in following up. And thank you also for that very interesting and provocative question that you've started me with. I do want to begin, and I will keep my remarks short, but just to thank the Global Policy Insights and the Ramphal Institute for inviting me to participate in this symposium. I'm here with you today representing one of the three intergovernmental pillars of the Commonwealth Foundation. And in that regard, I'm very happy to be following on from my friend and colleague, the Commonwealth Secretary General, Baroness Scotland, who joined the first meeting in this series. I don't want to waste any of the precious time that we have remaining, so I'll begin with just a couple of words about the Foundation, and then I want to move on directly to the bigger questions we're all facing in this new uncertain world, taking your question, Neha, as really a starting point, because I think it's impossible to answer it adequately in just myself. Now, I'm sure many of you do know the foundation story, established by the heads of government in 1965. The creation of the foundation was intended to give a very clear signal, a signal of the commitment of member states to ensuring that the Commonwealth family would be as much an association of peoples as of governments. And as one of the Commonwealth's 3 intergovernmental organisations, the Foundation's job is to bring the voice of civil society into all aspects of governance, supporting civil society engagement in shaping the policies and the decisions that affect people's lives. We deliver this support through grant making, through capacity development, and of course through our fairly famous cultural initiatives. I've been Director General of the Foundation now for almost a year, and if I was to try and capture our vision in just a few short words, it would be inclusive, transparent, and accountable governance. These are the ideals that really guide our work. I want to leave the foundation there at the moment. Of course, I can pick up any questions that people might have, but I wanted to move straight on to the bigger questions, the ones that you raised, Neha, and that Jarvis has already touched on, the questions that are central to our discussion here today. What's the role of the Commonwealth in global governance, especially in this new, uncertain, frightening world that we're facing? How can we optimize the Commonwealth as a force for good? How can we, the many pieces of the Commonwealth jigsaw, fit together to create something that's much more than the sum of our parts? And when I was considering these questions, when I was preparing for this seminar, I started to think it might be useful to reflect briefly on the Commonwealth's past, specifically on a critical time when the organisation presented itself as truly a leading political and moral force. I do this to remind myself, to remind us of what our Commonwealth is capable of, and indeed of what we can aspire towards. And the era that I'm referring to is one that Jarvis briefly highlighted, that period of time from the 70s to the 1990s, when Commonwealth leadership of the international struggle against the apartheid government of South Africa did so much to enhance the profile and the position of the organisation. So thinking about this as a case study, what were the key features? First of all, we understand very well that activity took place bilaterally as well as multilaterally through the Commonwealth heads of government. Leadership of the sanctions campaign through the Sanctions Committee that was actually set up by the Commonwealth, the Gleneagles Agreement that banned sporting contacts, the role of the Commonwealth Eminent Persons Group advocating so effectively for the release of Nelson Mandela, Commonwealth governments individually and then together in smaller and larger alliances, including the UK government, working to sensitise other Commonwealth countries and urging unity around non-Commonwealth initiatives such as the UN arms embargo against South Africa. Sue Onslow has documented so well the impact that one person, Nelson Mandela, his leadership had on the Commonwealth, helping to entrench its role as a global leader for democracy and human rights. His landmark decision to lead the suspension of Nigeria from membership in 1995, internally creating the Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group, externally galvanizing international action on suspension of democracy in Nigeria. Onslow is one of, I think, many who've identified this as really the high point, a time when the Commonwealth presented a united front in support of human rights and demonstrated really a shared commitment, not just to a principle, but actually to doing something, doing very concrete things to make that principle something very real. And in terms of the lessons that we can take, I think for me, first and foremost, it's the lesson that the Commonwealth has demonstrated its capacity as a leader, as a force for positive change, even in the most difficult, the most intractable of circumstances. We also take the lesson that leadership can be personal as well as institutional. Nelson Mandela personally helped to shape the Commonwealth. He helped as an individual to increase its legitimacy and its effectiveness. But this case study also reminds us of a limitation that all intergovernmental organisations face. It's only ever going to be as powerful, as effective as its members, and I'm talking about members broadly now, allow it to be. And in terms of what we think when we think about civil society engagement, this of course is something that comes to the heart of the mission of the foundation. This is where I believe the Commonwealth differs from other intergovernmental organisations. Of course, all intergovernmental organisations aspire to be seen as organisations of people, not just of states. Indeed, the Charter of the UN begins with those strong and proud words, "We the peoples of the United Nations." But the Commonwealth is special in making that real. Right from the beginning, it affirmed an identity that went beyond its member states to embrace the peoples of the Commonwealth, not just through establishing the foundation, but also through the language of its declarations, actually the language of the Charter itself. And I believe that we must build on that. The Commonwealth's legitimacy rests so heavily on it being seen not just as a club for its member states, but also of and for the people of the Commonwealth. And now, in closing my remarks, I just want to echo a few things that Jarvis pointed out, that the Commonwealth presents really a model for low-cost, collegial, consensus-based international cooperation that can help move the global political and development agenda forward. We've seen that. We've seen evidence of that. Jarvis noted the feature of shared history and the quality of flexibility that's inherent in the structure of the Commonwealth. This is the good kind of network. It doesn't make huge demands of its members, but it does bring in everyone, including powerful actors. And in saying this, I'm echoing Jarvis's own observation that the strength of the Commonwealth lies not only in the membership of governments, it's the wider family, the web of peoples, businesses, and civil society networks who, together with the member states, constitute the Commonwealth as a real family and as a powerful international actor. It was Nelson Mandela himself who famously said when he came to Marlborough House, "The Commonwealth makes the world safe for diversity." And it was so clear that in this, he was referring to this unique capacity of the Commonwealth to unite under one generous and benevolent umbrella such very different countries, peoples, institutions, and networks. So I think I should stop there. I did have a few more comments about networks and particularly around COVID-19, but I'd be happy to take those at a later point after we've heard from our other panelists. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gallagher, for that opening statement. It really does position the role of modern networks and how really they should be conceptualized to deliver upon modern priorities. But again, at the same time, there are several questions regarding legitimacy, influence, and advocacy that are raised, some of which that you pointed to and some which also were raised by Secretary General Mathia. So let me bring in Dr. Monroe here because the work of the CLGF closely is with local governance, with local governments, where challenges of representations can be very harshly felt, especially in dealing with voices of the marginalized, when dealing with demands of minority groups. So in that sort of a context, how do you feel the voices of the different networks of the Commonwealth can be reconciled in such a way that one voice for all emerges from the Commonwealth? And is that narrative even possible? If I can bring in Dr. Monroe there.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm very pleased that my preceding speakers refer to my country so much. And probably the highlight of my career was working in the first administration of Nelson Mandela as president. And I'm very pleased that Anne is using Nelson Mandela and leadership and Commonwealth all in the same sentence. It warms my heart. So CLGF, as many of you know, is its key strengths is its membership across the Commonwealth, bringing national and local political players together around the table and underpinned by a good evidence base. But with one clear focus, and that clear focus is inclusive and resilient communities. And if what we are doing doesn't add to that and doesn't add value to communities, then I think we should stop doing it. I think that's one of the most important aspects around the network. We also have we have two networks, like CPA have their networks. We've also got a Women in Local Government network. We have a Sustainable Cities and Urbanization network, and we have offices in 10 Commonwealth countries. Our main focus is democracy, localized development, sustainable urbanization, and as I said, inclusive and resilient communities. I think one of the challenges we face in both in inclusion and in expanding our network is that the Commonwealth is often viewed as very, very complex in its architecture. And it is. You've got a mix of 3 international government organizations. You've got, as Jarvis mentioned, the 6 quasi-governmental associated organizations that have political boards. You've got the 75 odd affiliated organizations that Nicholas Watts will talk about. And then we also have the organizations that don't work only in the Commonwealth, but also meet some of the requirements. So for example, Rotary, who are also on this session. And in spite of their complexity, it's a growing group. So we must be doing something right. And I think if it is a growing group, I think we also need to challenge ourselves and say, is it growing in commitment at a head of state level, at a high political level, or does it mean something to communities? Does it mean something to people who are marginalized? Does it mean something to the voice of people who don't normally have a voice? And I think that becomes a challenge to us. Both the previous speakers have mentioned the fight against apartheid, and I've actually heard Commonwealth members at a fairly high political level making a statement saying that was the pinnacle of the Commonwealth. And since then, it's been downhill. Now, we need to change that. If that's the feeling, we need to change that, because there's so many other challenges that we need to face in this world together. But it's that commitment and that deep abiding commitment to those values, to the 16 Commonwealth values, that I think we need to come back to. And on that, I'm going to raise something that you asked, Jarvis, and that was about Rwanda, and that Rwanda and Mozambique did not have a colonial history. But you know something? Egypt was colonized, UAE was colonized, Myanmar was colonized, Yemen was colonized. They're not members of the Commonwealth. And I think we don't help ourselves by continuing the British narrative. It doesn't help us. And I think we need to move away from the British narrative. This is not a British Commonwealth. This is a Commonwealth where I think some of the emerging economies and the more developing economies can actually teach the older member states a few lessons. So for example, on local government, when I do global advocacy, I don't walk around the world saying you must go to Australia to see really good local government, or you must come to the UK. I don't, because it's not true. All the good practice examples that I have on local government are all in Africa and Asia. So, for example, they're not all in Africa and Asia, but some of them are Pacific and Caribbean. So, for example, if you want to see women in local government, you go to Rwanda. You want to see really good legislation in local government, you go to South Africa. You want to see good engagement with civil society and local government, you go to Sierra Leone. You want to see technology in local government, you go to India, and so on and so on. So I think the narrative, we need to be careful of our narrative, and I think our narrative is around 16 principles. It's not about a history with Britain. I think the other thing we need to do going forward is we need to, as I said, focus on our Commonwealth citizens and communities. Are we adding value to their lives in what we are doing? Whether it be supporting parliamentarians, supporting local government councillors, whether supporting civil society. It must have a community focus. And the complexity of the network that we have, I think we need to strengthen opportunities for engagement and sharing. So the AOs get together and we meet. IFCO gets together and it meets. ComSec has its networks. And we meet on a quarterly basis, but maybe we need to find alternative opportunities where we can actually say, how do we approach a problem from a multifaceted view, where a number of organizations can actually work together in dealing with an issue in the Commonwealth to get greater traction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Monroe. And I think in particular, when you mentioned the emerging narratives of the Commonwealth, of the modern Commonwealth, I think it makes the Commonwealth a topic for timely discussion, because it is an institution which has both linkages from the former empire and at the same time is emerging very independent of those narratives. And it really, it does present a platform in context of the social movements which are emerging today as well. And just to also mention another point that you had traced about the political action of the Commonwealth, and in particular with the apartheid movement, and you referred to that as the pinnacle of the Commonwealth, as many argue. And I want to bring in Dr. Watts there, because Dr. Watts has also argued extensively in terms of the effectiveness of the third pillar of the Commonwealth. So I want to bring you in, Dr. Watts, and ask you that what do you think are the shortcomings in the existing structures, especially when we talk about governance and advocacy models, and where does a network like the Independent Forum, the IFCO, fit into that picture? If we can hear from you, Dr. Watts.
Thank you very much. Neha, I'm impressed by the previous speaker's comments, and I hope mine will fit into this overall rubric. Let me just say a few words about the history of the Independent Forum of Commonwealth Organizations, the IFCO, and then maybe its potential place in the Commonwealth's institutional architecture will become apparent. But the IFCO, there have been networks of Commonwealth organizations before, but the IFCO was formed in 2015 after the outcome of the Malta summit was so positive that heads went to Paris to sign the Paris Agreement, then to New York to support the Sustainable Development Goals. And obviously since then, we've had the hiatus of the United States taking a sabbatical from multilateral institutions. So, and with the COVID, and we also see this another piece of contextualization, we see that populist governments have proved singularly ineffectual in dealing with the COVID. So I see the Commonwealth as a beacon of hope if we can cleave to the Commonwealth Charter and Commonwealth values as the architecture for sustaining liberal democracy globally, which is obviously overstating the Commonwealth's current potential, but at least it's an aspirational goal. The IFCO is a means of bringing together Commonwealth organizations on a quarterly basis to discuss issues frequently pertaining to the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in preparation of our submission, joint submission to the Charter. Seem to be echoing for sustaining liberal democracy globally, which
I'm not sure what's going on there.
Sorry, no. I don't quite understand what's happening, but I seem to be echoing. I don't know what to switch off, so I'll just carry on. We also enjoy pulling together new clusters of Commonwealth organizations, that is organizing collectively groups around particular themes, and we've got new ones at the moment around culture and around sustainable urbanization, where the CLGF, Greg's organization, and the planners and the architects and the Prince's Trust are working together to develop a program on smart cities and sustainable urbanization. So that's a substantive contribution. If I just echo a point that I think Jarvis made, is that we claim to have, because there's not so much churn in Commonwealth organizations, to be a repository of the institutional memory of the Commonwealth, which is, I think, of value, and also a force for or a source of innovation. I'll list one or two of those. In preparing for the CHOGM, we usually address the themes as presented by the host government and the Secretariat. One of those for Rwanda is governance and rule of law, and we see the Commonwealth Lawyers Association now commenting on developments in Samoa and Sri Lanka that seem to be in contravention, if you like, of Commonwealth principles. I think Commonwealth health organizations have developed the Digital Health Initiative. The pharmacists are preparing for the next pandemic, possibly, antimicrobial resistance. So there are more pandemics on the way. The innovation strand as well, the Commonwealth civil society organizations were among the first to address the Blue Charter or the Blue Economy. In 2009, we took the book from the Commonwealth Fisheries Programme to the Trinidad CHOGM, and I think the Blue Charter is a flagship initiative which looks to be progressing very well. We also have activities on polio, on COVID. We have the historic development of youth networks in the Commonwealth, which have been very strong and a real beacon since '97, when at the 1997 Edinburgh CHOGM, we had the initiative of the People's Commonwealth with the development of a women's forum, a business forum, and a youth forum. I think that we also provide, or organizations provide, research. For example, the Commonwealth Human Rights Initiative work on modern slavery. They've produced a new report due, well, for publication in what would have been CHOGM Week. Common Age, for example, has produced a report for last year's CHOGM on the elderly in the Commonwealth. And the Commonwealth organizations, another one of them is the Association of Commonwealth Universities. So we have 500 universities are part of the CO's network. The Commonwealth Trade Union Group has 70 million members. And so there are different scales of Commonwealth organizations, other smaller ones that are now threatened because they're reliant on voluntary contributions of individuals, and the Commonwealth organizations no longer have core funding supplied, but that's something maybe we need to go in for more crowdfunding initiatives. I think if we look at the contribution also, we see the Commonwealth Consortium for Education or helping put on the education ministers meeting. The Commonwealth organizations are instrumental in helping develop the ministerials, as well as holding meetings in the wings of ministerials. So I think if I were to characterize Commonwealth organizations, I suppose I would say the main focus is on outcomes and on livelihoods, on the health and well-being of the peoples of the Commonwealth. And that is I think, a critical concern, that we get access to decision making, and I think also greater transparency of the Commonwealth Secretariat would be welcome. And I'm also interested in seeing, and I think we're also interested in seeing, implementation of the high-level group report on the Commonwealth, especially as it relates to the relations between Commonwealth organisations and the formal Commonwealth. And I think if we look at current challenges, we've got, well, the implementation of the high-level group report, the question of the Commonwealth brand. Frequently I ask people around the climate change issue, for example, about Commonwealth input, and they said, well, nobody ever mentions the Commonwealth in relation to climate change. I mean, we do in the London bubble, but apparently not so much elsewhere. And then there's the question of decentralization and of how to build regional groupings or regional inputs from the members of Commonwealth organizations, members around the whole of the Commonwealth. And the two positive things on the horizon, one I think is virtual meetings or online meetings, which mean that we can engage directly with people who usually take 2 or 3 days travel and a fortune to get to face-to-face meetings. They can be included in our meetings now, as long as we get the timing of the meetings right. And the other, I think, is the need to engage with the influence of China, that the emergent debt of Commonwealth nations, Commonwealth developing countries to China, and how the Commonwealth chooses to engage with China, especially if Chinese influence is also having an impact on the continuity, the continuous upholding of democratic principles, in particular Commonwealth nations. I think I should leave it there, but thank you very much for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the IFCO.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watts, and thank you, in fact, for speaking of the vitality of the modern Commonwealth. And that's often something which is questioned by critics and skeptics of this institution. And it's often brought into questions about the legitimacy of institutions like the European Union, and whether the Commonwealth can also, achieve something as legitimate as the work of the EU. So I think your answer fits very well into that debate. But at the same time, you've raised some very pertinent questions. And let me bring in SG Mathia there. And firstly, SG Mathia, are there any responses that you have for specifically the last few questions raised by Dr. Watts? And the other aspect that I also want you to focus on would be that we've heard from previous speakers about the emphasis on civic voices, but being at the helm of the CPA, the mandate that you work with is designed to assist efficient governments. So do you think that there is a tension felt there between the collaborations of these networks and their interworkings? If we can bring you back in, SG Mathia.
Thank you so much. I'll start perhaps with the first question, and very much to complement what Nicholas and Dr. Anne have said in terms of the challenges that the Commonwealth face. I think the simple answer is that the challenges that the Commonwealth face have not changed, are the same challenges, which are on, poverty, development, human rights, weak institutions. And I think we grapple with these challenges continuously. I think that with the coming in of the COVID pandemic, so the countries are put at a very at a position where these challenges become intensified. I think the issue of trade negotiations at WTO, particularly for small states, continues to be the one where these small states don't have expertise or the voice to sort of negotiate what is best for them. The question of resilience on climate change continues to be something that we grapple on. Interesting, I think in the lockdown, I think statistics have shown that, the ozone layer has sort of rebuilt, and therefore one needs to think of the continuous effect of climate change once the lockdown has been lifted. I think the other challenge, I think, is a question of dwindling resources and competing, priorities. There will never be a time where, there will be sufficient resources for governments to deliver on each and every, aspect of development. But I think on the question of competing priorities, part of the reason why these organizations exist and the Commonwealth exists is to sort of advocate for, prioritization of issues that affect the people of the Commonwealth. On the second question, I think relates to the CPA as a membership organization, which pretty much respond to the needs of its members, which are parliamentarians and parliaments. I think the whole essence of having this discussion and also coming together as a body is to look at how we can work collaboratively with other, stakeholders, including civil society and other organizations, especially on specific thematic areas where other organizations may be better placed than the CPA, and invite them, engage with them in a number of ways. One of the ways we engage with those is to involve civil society organizations at our annual conference, especially in the segment on learning and development. So we do, within the conference itself, we do have a series of workshops on particular issues that affect the Commonwealth people, not only the parliamentarians. I think it has proved to be useful opportunity to sort of benefit from the expertise and the knowledge of others who are like-minded and who are pushing for specific thematic areas. But also, I think the other aspect of my answer is within the doctrine of separation of powers, between the three branches of government. The whole essence of the Latimer House principles is to promote good relationships and to encourage good working relationship between the parliamentarians and the executive and the judiciary, in order to make sure that the principles on development, gender equality, poverty alleviation are taken forward. So there is that opportunity, and we enjoy that opportunity of engaging with other, branches of government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, SG Mathia. And if I can bring back Dr. Gallagher into this discussion, particularly on one of the aspects raised just now, which is that the problems that we've had before this pandemic would have actually perhaps even intensified in the current context by exposing critical gaps. And the Commonwealth Foundation in particular works very closely with the UN Development Agenda. It's incorporated in the Vision 2012 of the foundation. So I have to ask you that is this a time to realize whether we've moved beyond the narratives that the SDGs offer, and is there a need to look at other systemic inequalities, the focus on upcoming social movements, and where does the Commonwealth Foundation find itself in this tide? Dr. Gallagher.
Thank you very much, Neha. And that's there are a few very difficult, complex questions there. So I think I'll just begin with an answer, and perhaps some of my fellow panelists can pick up where I inevitably leave off. I think that there is probably nobody on this panel, or indeed participating in this particular event, who doesn't share my concern about where we are now. And the true concern is the uncertainty. If you had asked me these questions 6 months ago, I think everything would have been different. We really don't know where we are at the moment. We don't know the extent to which what's happening now is generating. We can see that the pandemic has generated social mobility and social unrest on a scale that really none of us predicted. We don't know what direction all of this will take us. We don't know what direction the pandemic will take us, and we really don't know what the world's going to look like 6, 12 months down the track, or let alone a couple of years. I do worry about civil society structures, whether civil society has, we need to interrogate this. To what extent have our civil society structures proven to be robust enough to deal with crisis? Because whatever the future does hold for us, uncertainty will be the name of the game. How can we at the foundation, this is the question we're asking ourselves, how can we help to build civil society structures? How can we engage with our member state governments to remind them all the time, to demonstrate, to show them the importance of bringing civil society along, particularly in relation to the development of policies that actually affect people's lives? I feel that the pandemic, and in fact everything that's happening to us now, is emphasizing all the time, is bringing home to us how important people and communities and networks are. The trick is going to be how we actually manage to integrate these lessons going forward. And this is where I think there is reason for optimism, but also some very, very real concerns that if we can't unite together, if we can't develop some common approaches and commitments, we're going to lose this opportunity, and the Commonwealth and Commonwealth civil society will be the poorer for that missed opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gallagher. That indeed is a brilliant insight in terms of what we're going through and what would be the challenges going forwards. And let me bring in Dr. Monroe here, because one of the key challenges that at least comes from a level of the civil society has been that the COVID-19 pandemic has brought to the forefront the role of the state. And I want to ask you here whether you feel that this would have any lasting implications on questions of accountability, transparency, and human rights, particularly in the context of civic voices. Dr. Monroe, please.
Yes, thank you. So at CLGF, we've been holding online webinars with our members. We've had to do it regionally because of the time zones. And specifically around local government's engagement in COVID responses. And understandably, there's a plethora of responses that where in some countries there's a very strong local government engagement, and another it's very nationally driven. Now, I mean, I can give you some really good examples. So my own country, South Africa, for example, the local government was included in the presidential task team from day one. The daily meetings that happen, just like we have in the UK, we have COBRA, local government was there, right in the center. Local government was involved. There was a mobilizing of regional and local primary healthcare workers, and 10 to 12 million South Africans have already been screened for COVID, using a local and regional response. A solidarity fund had been set up at local government level. So there's an example of where local government response has been really integrated into the national response. In other countries, there's been fiscal transfers to local government. And yet in others, and I won't mention, but one of the more economically developed member states of the Commonwealth, there's been widespread redundancies of local government. Local government has been hung out to dry with no engagement. And this is one of the big countries, the so-called rich countries of the Commonwealth. And in many countries where I see there's been a really good response, there's been local government involved and there's been civil society involved. And where you've had those two together, there's been a very strong community and local government driven response. Now, across the world, as you just in your question, I mean, we're seeing examples of COVID being used to re-centralize authority, to have decreased accountability and transparency. And there are some many, many disturbing things happening around the world. if we choose a non-Commonwealth example, because there are some Commonwealth examples, which I don't want to mention here, but so we see what's happening in Hong Kong at the moment. I mean, it's very, very disturbing. And I think what this has meant for us, and our members are articulating this, that in our global advocacy for decentralization, it is no longer an academic debate. COVID has shown us that it is absolutely essential that we decentralize for the good of our citizens and the good for development. This is no longer an academic thing. And I've had a number of members actually articulating that decentralization, meaningful decentralization with powers, functions, and money is now the new normal. And CLGF is going to go into overdrive in its global advocacy on decentralization globally. We serve as the global task force on regional and local government and engage with the UN on a regular basis. We serve on the United Nations Advisory Committee on Local Authorities. We are going to go into overdrive on decentralization. We have many practical examples where with funding, we are already supporting member states in decentralization, and we are going to ratchet that up significantly post-COVID because of the challenge of subtle re-centralization. So it's an open invitation to everybody here. Please come and join us in that effort.
Thank you very much, Dr. Monroe. And let me take that discussion on decentralization and bring that as a segue to bring in Dr. Watts, because decentralization is something that you mentioned previously as well. And going away from a governmental level to within the networks of the Commonwealth, do you think that this is also an opportune time to bring up a conversation about decentralization and about revisiting the hierarchies and the power structures within the Commonwealth? Dr. Watts, could we have your insight on that?
Yes, can you hear me? Yes, I'm not sure that the IFCO is currently in a position to rearrange the Commonwealth architecture for engagement and decentralization. I think we see the post-COVID era of online communications as a great opportunity for Commonwealth organizations to reach and include their local counterparts around the countries of the Commonwealth, because to be accredited as a Commonwealth organization, you're supposed to be engaging, I think, in 3 of the 4 Commonwealth regions. That's a looser condition than it used to be. And I think we have to ask our members to step up and say what's happening on the ground at a local level. And that I think we could do through Commonwealth organizations, but I think there we also would need to be very constructive in our outreach to Anne Gallagher and the foundation, who are the other part. If we talk about civil society as the 3rd pillar of the Commonwealth organizations are rooted in their foundation in the 60s on the basis of professional bodies in the Commonwealth. There are more campaigning organizations now, but the foundation reaches out to the wider civil society in the Commonwealth through its grants. I mean, I stand corrected by Anne Gallagher, but I think just one quick comment. This has been really an inspiring session, I think, for me, because what the IFCO is currently doing is preparing a set of, the steering group is preparing a set of statements to identify what we think the key questions are for the Commonwealth post-COVID, and using what's been called an inflection point, where both with COVID and with racism, we're seeing a global movement to turn things around. And I think the emphasis on One Health, for example, would still address the SDGs, but draw on the strengths of Commonwealth organizations. And also around Black Lives Matter, I think the Commonwealth Association of Museums, in fact, has the expertise to address issues of memorialization and the tearing down of memorials and the lateness of the tearing down or the removal of memorials. So there is a huge range of skills among the Commonwealth organizations, as well as across Commonwealth civil society, we can bring to bear. and we take the initiative. I think we'll have a chance to talk to Greg about how we possibly link up with the CLGF. But CLGF, as I say, is working with the planners and the architects around sustainable urbanization. So the links are already there between the associated organization that is CLGF and Commonwealth organizations, so-called COs.
Right, thank you very much, Dr. Watts. And we were going to bring in the discussion on memorialization, but just before that, if I can bring in SG Mathia on that front, just speaking at a more international level, we have seen that there is a reordering, there is a reprioritization of what are considered important regional alliances. Is there a possibility where these networks within the CPA can also change the nature of a regional Commonwealth and the idea of regional Commonwealths? And at the same time, do you think that can this be an opportunity to increase the share of influence that Commonwealth networks have at an international front? Please, SG Mathia. Apologies, Secretary General, I think your mic's muted. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that question. As I mentioned earlier, when I was introducing the CPA, I did mention that we have 9 regions, and within the 9 regions, they are all set up in terms of how they organize their conferences, their priorities for the region, and there's some sort of semi-autonomy in terms of the agenda that they set. And in terms of interaction and networking at regional level, it's a freestyle kind of networking depending on the priorities at the regional level. And so we see the setup of a CPA in regions as an opportunity to encourage and increase networking and collaboration on the ground at regional level, while at the global level, the CPA, through its executive committee, do look at global partners within which to partner with and network on various thematic areas of work, but also in terms of specific activities that are delivered at the global level, as well as at the
Hello.
We partner with the area of focus those partner organizations bring to the table.
Thank you. Apologies, SG Mathia. I think we missed your last statement because of a connectivity issue. So if we could please request you to repeat it so that we don't miss out.
I think I was saying that in terms of the activities that we deliver, both at the global level as well as at regional level, we do partner with other specific organizations with specific thematic areas of focus, depending on the area of work that we're delivering. So our collaboration with various stakeholders at different level, but we find that the regional and the branches set up of a CPA do have an increased interaction in terms of what is priority in those areas, on those regions that the work is done.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this discussion. And before we get into audience questions, may I please request the panel to deliver short, brief statements on what can be the potential takeaways for both networks within the Commonwealth and aspirational networks outside of the Commonwealth based on the workings of these vanguards. And just on that closing note, can we begin with Dr. Gallagher again?
Thank you very much, Neha. Well, I think I'm in a bit more of listening mode than saying anything more. I think that this is a great reminder to us of what we can do, what is possible. And it's also a reminder that the challenges we're facing, the need for the Commonwealth, but also for the Commonwealth family to come together has never been more urgent than it is right now. But I think it's going to take creativity. I don't believe that it can ever, again, be business as usual. I don't believe that incremental change is going to allow us to take the leadership position that that we should be taking. So I know that at the foundation, we're thinking very hard about how we can be of service to Commonwealth civil society, how we can stand up and bring civil society to the fore at this critical time. And it is requiring us to interrogate really at a very fundamental level why we exist and what our place should be in the Commonwealth family. And I think if this can be part of a broader conversation, a deep and honest conversation, then we really have a chance to fulfill the potential that is there at the heart of our beloved organisation. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Gallagher. And if I may take those comments to bring in Dr. Monroe, and any remarks that you have, and what would be your takeaways for these networks or the closing comments for this panel?
So I think it's also action, it's action and actually showing that we are a collective rather than talking about it. So I mean, and there are practical examples. So let me give you a few practical examples from CLGF's point of view. I mean, we talk about sustainable urbanization, the use of technology for delivery and for development. And there's a Commonwealth technology organization in our family. We talk about engaging parliamentarians to support local government and to empower local government. And there's a CPA in our family. We talk about enhancing our evidence base for our delivery. And there's the Association of Commonwealth Universities in our family. We talk about finance and taxation at local level, and there's CTA, also in our group. We talk about meaningful community engagement and participation in governance, and there's a Commonwealth Foundation right here on the call. We talk about small island states and the Blue Charter and its effect on local government and all its Commonwealth Secretariat work. Now, I can go on forever and ever. And these are practical examples of how the network can work together. We spend a lot of time talking about it, and very little time actually doing it. And which is why Nicholas has raised this sustainable urbanization piece that now 4 or 5 organizations, we are a long way down the road to getting some tangible outputs on our work. In terms of aspirant networks, you mentioned earlier something about the time to move away from the SDGs and move towards these emerging social movements. I don't think we should move away from global development. I think we need to do 2 things. We need to localize global development to make it closer to people and more owned by people. And I think we need to harness the energy of these emerging social movements and let's incorporate them within the global development movement, because we are all working for the same thing. I want to get the energy of those movements into our SDG localized global development and to turn it into a movement itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Monroe. And may I bring in Dr. Watts there, particularly to comment on the 2 key points that Dr. Monroe raised, and also to give any closing remarks and comments for the panel. Do we have Dr. Watts with us?
Do I take the major key point I take from Greg's statement is that we already have much of the capacity we need, but we need to bring it together and mobilize it. Is that what you mean by one of the key questions? And could you tell me what the other one was?
Absolutely. The other one just being the idea of bringing in the power of social movements into the working of the SDG agenda that's imbibed by Commonwealth networks as the priority.
Oh yes, I think that goes, it doesn't go without saying, or he wouldn't have said it, but I think that is accepted and understood. And if I just go back to the beginning of the Commonwealth Fisheries Programme, that was a cooperation between Commonwealth organisations and the Foundation. And I think if we're looking at implementation here of projects, we need to think about partnerships such as the Sustainable Urbanisation one mentioned, where the intergovernmental organisations and the associated organisations and the Commonwealth organisations can work together to develop projects and to seek funding, because there is so much funding out there that we are not taking advantage of. I should just mention that the IFCO will be having a meeting in what would have been Chogam Week to address issues around pose the questions to ask after COVID, and we would welcome participation from Commonwealth organisations and others. And we have a website, ifco.online, which we will update for that meeting. But I fully agree with Greg's perspective, and I do think localizing the SDGs is going to be much more fruitful than sort of moving on to a different agenda. The SDGs are what we have and what we need, but I think the anti-racist agenda and the post-COVID agenda will give a new slant on the SDGs in relation to democracy as well.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watts. And finally, if I can bring in SG Mathia to give his closing comments, and also if there are any concerns raised by other panelists, if you would like to please address them, particularly on the defining agenda and the narrative going forwards.
I think the panelists have said it all, but I think just to add that, you know, the importance of strengthening the networks within the Commonwealth is an important one. While these networks already provide an effective vehicle for change, I think it is important that we should constantly be looking for ways to improve efficacy and cohesiveness, and looking at ways of strengthening these networks, and also enhance the peer-to-peer learning that improves, you know, what we're trying to do, and speaking and doing collectively to enhance the work of our parliaments, local governments, and others that these organizations are focusing on. I think that an ever closer and more meaningful commitment on effective partnership between, you know, Commonwealth organizations and the Secretariat is important, because it will raise the profile of the Commonwealth and what it tries to do, especially in pushing for the SDG 30 agenda, which focuses on leaving no one behind in so many ways and providing a voice to the voiceless. I think that it is important to make sure that, you know, these commitment for effective partnership are not ceremonial, but very much rooted in the output, the outcomes, and the value of coming together to promote, you know, respective areas of work. So I think that conversations like these ones we are having now are important, because we are able to share ideas and also look at emerging issues like the COVID, which is important and has affected everyone, and also try to refocus in view of the priorities that we set pre-COVID, and how do we see that moving forward in terms of other competing priorities and dwindling resources, time, and space. So I think I found this conversation very useful, and once again, thanks very much to you all at Global Insights for organizing this.
Thank you very much to all panelists for those final remarks. And with this, we do have a number of comments and questions from the audience. So let me first bring in Dr. Watts. There seem to be a lot of confusion or challenges regarding what you meant by the Commonwealth's engagement on the climate change agenda. So if we could have you elaborate on that. And in particular, we've heard from Carl Wright and others in context of the work that CLGF does towards it. So if I could bring you in, Dr. Watts, on that.
No, just to clarify, I think Carl is absolutely right in terms of what's happening with C40, with the cities on climate. It's just that people don't tend to talk of the Commonwealth in addressing these issues. And I've recently been through the literature on climate change over the last decade, and the Commonwealth as a policy actor is mentioned once as a funder, but is not or hardly ever mentioned. So I'm talking about the Commonwealth, probably implying the Commonwealth Secretariat, but the role of cities is absolutely clear, and it's vital in this new alliance around sustainable urbanization and cities.
Thank you very much, Dr. Watson. If I can briefly bring in Dr. Monroe there, and just to address a question that comes from Dr. Watt's response itself, that how can we bring the Commonwealth as the driving force for the climate change agenda and bring it to the forefront of all conversations and literature on climate change?
I mean, I think it is a focus. I mean, for CLGF, I mean, we with our members, and so many of our members coming from small island states, it's very much on the agenda. We have a global partnership with a global climate change initiative, which is ICLEI. We engage with C40. I mean, I'm taking part in a UN climate change oceans session next week, so it's very much on the agenda. I mean, the ComSec have got the Blue Charter. It's on their agenda as well. I mean, I think maybe what we need to do is, as a Commonwealth, I think this is what Nicholas is hinting at, is that we need, as a Commonwealth grouping, to probably be more joined up in our initiatives around climate change. Yeah. And I think we should do that. I mean, I really think it affects civil society, and it is something that it could be another example, like sustainable urbanization, where we could link up our efforts.
Thank you very much, Dr. Monroe. Thank you. And I think another, yes, Dr. Watts, please.
Could I just say yes? And I think mention of the Blue Charter, all aspects of the Blue Charter address aspects of climate change as well. But I think I fully agree with what Greg has just said. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those statements. And if I can bring in Dr. Gallagher for a question regarding funding, which has been a topic of discussion for this panel, has also been raised by the members of our audience, that funding is a big issue to bring much of the priorities of the Commonwealth and its local actors to the forefront, and particularly with the COVID-19 pandemic, where we're looking at a downstreaming of funding for aid agencies, for grants bodies. How do we address the question of funding? And personally, at the helm of the Commonwealth Foundation, do you think that we are at a point where the networks have their funding issues adequately addressed, or if we have mechanisms to look at these funding issues? Dr. Gallagher.
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha. And I think funding is, of course, always an issue, particularly for civil society organizations that are working in the spaces that we all are. Now, as most people know very well, an earlier iteration, an earlier version of the foundation was much more connected financially to the Commonwealth accredited organizations, and that really hasn't been the case now for well over a decade. But I think that the developments are overall very positive ones, and the foundation has managed to orient itself in such a way that one of our flagship programs is, of course, our grants program, which delivers around £1 million, or actually it ring fences £1 million of funding every year for civil society organisations who apply to the foundation for projects that are advancing the broader Commonwealth goal of inclusive participatory governance. And of course, we very much encourage our family, our Commonwealth accredited organisations to work with us in many ways, but also to seek funding through the grants program, which is a competitive program. And I'm very happy to say that a number of Commonwealth accredited organisations have been successful in seeking grants under the program. I did want to just perhaps flag in a very preliminary way that we are proposing to reorient the grants program for the coming year towards COVID-19 and towards the needs of civil society as they work with governments to respond and rebuild after the pandemic. And this is, we will be trying to ensure that this special grants call, it's only going to be for 1 year, will really be something that can be open Commonwealth wide, and that it can be accessible to as many organisations that are doing good work as possible. So more information on that will be coming out soon. We're looking to accelerate the coming year's grants call so that this can happen very quickly. And of course, I've made it a priority since I came in as Director General, to have a direct line to our accredited organisations through Nicholas and through others. So I'll make sure that that information is with our sister organisations as early as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gallagher, and definitely for sharing that development with us. And we're hugely honored that it's this forum that we can actually work towards developing the work of the networks itself. And just for the last audience question that we have, may I please bring in SG Mathia? And this question is in particular concerning the CPA's mandate and its primary values. And in the given context, again of rising systemic inequalities, how can the CPA foster or be the leader of an effective dialogue and change on this front? How can the CPA work to eradicate or encourage its Commonwealth governments to work on these areas of systemic inequalities?
Well, thank you for that question. The role of parliamentarians is very important in promoting all sorts of aspects of life. And also, it is important that parliamentarians are aware and advocate for right approaches when is enacting legislation or putting in place policies that affect those respective areas of life. So constantly when we have activities, either conferences or seminars or workshops, we identify specific areas of need that we think that our members would benefit from, both in terms of understanding emerging issues, but also learning from others in terms of how they have implemented those areas. For example, I think the workshop we had in Malta looking at small states and climate change, I think there was a lot of sharing of experience in terms of how other smaller states have legislated climate change, taking into account the outcome of the COP processes and what challenges they were facing. So the CPA is there to look at these practices and share knowledge and share experiences and learn from each other, use internal expertise, but also look outside the CPA and learn from others and bring people together and be able to look at the challenges that we are all facing.
Thank you very much, SG Mathia. And may I take this opportunity to express how honored I feel to be moderating this exceptional panel discussion. And may I thank all our panelists for not only their time, but their incisive commentary, their vision, their actionable insights, and all the valuable things that they've shared on this panel discussion today, which really nails the point that Commonwealth networks are the vanguards of the Commonwealth's vision in the 21st century. And with the Ramphal Institute as our partners at GPI, we hope that we can take this conversation forward and make the Commonwealth at the forefront of all important discussions as it is today, but even a more revitalized manner. So thank you very much for all the panelists, and we hope to also host you in person. But until then, let me bring in Ode for a quick closing comments. Thank you all.
Thank you, Neha. Very big thank you to all the panelists, to the brilliant panelists, and I echo your thoughts and that we can take this forward in kind of strengthening the Commonwealth networks, which are the real vanguards of the Commonwealth in the 21st century. Particularly, there is lot of things that I have noted today for me to take away. Um, I mean, be it a Commonwealth family coming together more than ever, as pointed by Dr. Gallagher, or the collective, bringing showing doing things collectively rather than showing things collectively, and also bringing the global SDGs to a local level, among others. These are definitely some takeaways that are there for us to take away, and I look forward to kind of as you just said, hosting them again physically in the coming future, and to contribute towards strengthening the vanguards. Once again, thank you very much. Thanks to our partners, Ramphal Institute, and also to audience from across the Commonwealth. I can see diplomats, I can see from all from across various countries and continents. It is quite encouraging to us as well. And apologies for the initial logistics issues. We that was due to the power failure in one of our Commonwealth countries where our secretariat is based in India. So we have conducted around 12 panels in the last few weeks, but this is the first one where we had all these logistical issues. So once again, thank you all. And if you want to know about any further events for the audience, you can follow us on @globalpolicyin or on our Facebook page, or you can write to us at info@globalpolicyinsights.org. Thank you all once again. Have a nice evening. Good night.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.